Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. The real story surrounding the death of Robin Williams, that is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. This afternoon, authorities in Marin County, California told the world that Mr. Williams hanged himself in his bedroom. As you might know, the media is playing the Williams story big, and some believe it might be too much. Bernie Goldberg will analyze that in just a few minutes. But Talking Points does not believe the coverage is overdone, because this is a very important story. Apparently, Robin Williams suffered from depression, as 16 million Americans do. And it was a depression that likely caused him to take his own life. This morning, I was impressed when Dr. Keith Abloh said this.
Here's the truth. Every life story, what happened to Robin Williams? He came to believe that this grand imposter, depression, robbed him of the belief that he had pages left of his life story that would be great. Everyone does have that. It's the absolute truth, I promise you. And if people will take a little bit of a horizon and say, look, maybe tomorrow I'll still feel terrible, but I bet that next season I will be restored if I deploy all the resources at my disposal. I promise, 100% that can happen.
Now, that is solid advice to everyone who gets depressed. Things will get better. The cycle of life dictates it, unless you are self-destructive. Now on to Mr. Williams himself. He's one of the last entertainment icons, meaning that most of the country knew him and his vast talent. Today, we're a fractured society with Americans going off into all different directions thanks to social media. Never again will entertainers like Robin Williams be so prominent in the nation's mind. Mr. Williams had a unique talent. I saw him at Carnegie Hall a few years ago, and almost his entire act was extemporaneous, off the cuff. Brilliance doesn't even begin to cover it. His peers knew that. They understood the giant talent of Robin Williams.
Well, it's too soon. He's out of here way too soon. He's very gifted. He was a benchmark in his field. How you been? And no one can ever kind of reach that again. I don't think no one ever did.
We are mourning the loss of such a great man, and he was also a friend, and I admired him, and he's a legend.
To make people laugh in today's world, with the violence and everything that is going around, that was a very serious business. We're going to miss him a lot.
It is a sad fact of life that many creative artists are tortured souls. Ernest Hemingway committed suicide, so did Kurt Cobain. And hundreds of other artists destroyed themselves with drugs and/or alcohol. There is a unique pressure on famous people. Everyone has high expectations of them. And it's very difficult to live up to those expectations and still live as a normal human being. I met Robin Williams one time at Yankee Stadium. He seemed to be a good guy, made everybody in the box laugh, and he was very courteous. Colonel Hunt, who provided security for Mr. Williams at times, confirmed that last night. So the nation mourns the death of Robin Williams, and hopefully all of us will become more aware of the depression situation. My friend Mike Wallace struggled with it his entire life and even attempted suicide himself. It's a terrible disease, but one that can be overcome. And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight. Reaction. Joining us on the phone from Idaho, actress Patty Duke, who addressed her depression in a book called A Brilliant Madness. And from Florida, singer Connie Francis, who also discussed depression in her book, Who's Sorry Now? Ms. Francis, I'll begin with you. After a terrible crime was committed on your person, rape, you descended into depression, but you've managed to survive. You've managed to prosper in some ways. Tell us how you did that.
It was a long, hard climb back. After having written that book, I was sent 16 times to mental institutions involuntarily. Taken from my home, 4 homes I had tried to build with my son and me. And it's against the law, but put in shackles, in isolation. I was misdiagnosed, as how happens very often. You know, it was the fashion of the year or era to be called bipolar, because I exhibited all of those symptoms that they considered bipolar to be bipolar, when in fact it was something that was part of my A-type personality since birth.
What I want to get to, and I want you to think about it, because I'm going to go over to Patty Duke now. What was what was the main thing that brought you back so you were able to function? Now, Ms. Duke, I want to address your situation as well.
Thank you, Bill.
When you heard, Ms. Duke, about Robin Williams committing suicide, what was the first thing that popped into your mind? How did you process it?
There was nothing that went through my mind. I just screamed, no, no, no. And I join all of the people that he made so happy with his laughter or his creativity in heartbreak today. I must say, after the screaming, I wondered why, of all people, couldn't he get the specific kind of help he needed? And I comforted myself with perhaps his illness was as unique as his creative genius. I suffered what got to be known as bipolar for 35 years, completely out of control, except when I was working. Boy, oh boy, was I in control then. But as the years went on, I tortured my family. I was abusive to my children. And finally, I was working with Richard Crenna, and I went into a manic episode. Everybody noticed, except me, of course. And they said they would cut down production and I could go to a doctor, which I did. And I was diagnosed, back then we called it manic depressive. And I was treated, in my case, with medication. And after quite a short time, I was able, for the first time in my life, to make decisions for myself. The illness didn't make those choices.
All right, so medication and analysis or diagnosis from a psychiatrist helped you get back on track. But you got to assume that Robin Williams had medication that he could have accessed and had.
That's the part of me that is screaming why.
Yeah, but the most important point is this, that the 16 million Americans, probably more, who suffer from depression, they need to basically surrender to someone they trust, a medical, like Dr. Abloh or somebody else, a medical person.
But first they need to know that there is hope and there is recovery. It's hard to surrender to something that is kind of the unknown.
But that's why we wanted you to come on the air tonight. That's why we wanted to put you on the air tonight, and Connie Francis also, so that people can see that you can overcome this illness, as tough as it is. So you're right. You're absolutely right. You've got to have hope, but you've got to have the discipline to also seek the best treatment.
Yes, and you have to want to, not just for your family, those are the unsung heroes, but for yourself, want to give up this illness. It's very tricky. It wants to keep you in its trap.
Yeah, you know, I understand that. I've seen people with it. In your case, I think for our viewers tonight, what was the one thing that turned around for you?
My brother's death became my resurrection. For 7 years, I was wallowing in self-victimization, and I leaned on them. Now my mom, I had actually three families to take care of. And I said, Connie, time to get off your behind and get going and do something about it.
So it was family. It was family that finally got through to you after all those years. Family.
I knew I couldn't afford to do that anymore. I had to do something and try to help as many people as I could.
I'm glad both of you are functioning now. We hope everybody who's suffering from depression becomes aggressive and does what they can do to get out of it. We appreciate it, ladies, very much. Next on the rundown, what about the intense media